Hello and welcome to Ravenloft Storytime. Today we're talking about history. For many scholars, researching the history of the domains of Dread can prove to be a frustrating experience. New domains appear at random, and all of them filled with people who bring oral or written history with them, sometimes thousands of years worth of it. Some historians speculate it to be fake, some believe it to be real. In reality, it's both. More often than not, the fake history is created by dark powers or a Dark Lord themselves to cover their tracks. It is especially convenient for those who do not rule their domain on the throne, but hide in the shadows. However, nobody is arguing that Barovia was the first to emerge from the mists. That is why the whole land has adopted Barovian calendar as the norm. Well, except for the isolated clusters of land among the Islands of Terror, but the first rule of talking about Islands of Terror is not talking about the Islands of Terror. They're not even on the main map, they're hidden in the shadows. The true origins of the realm of Dread remain a mystery. Reading from multiple creation myths, one can find similarities in description of dark powers and cycles of death and rebirth. This led a lot of scholars to believe that Ravenloft itself is just a current swirl in the constant river of death and decay. If so, then the creation of the domain of Barovia merely marked the birth of a new cycle of torment, and the death of whatever came before. Little is known about prime-material Barovia, where it undoubtedly originated. According to records, Strad von Zarovich was born in the year 299. As the eldest son in the aristocratic line, he entered the military as a child, rising steadily in the ranks. All good for him. In the same year Strad became a general, however, a horde of pillaging barbarians, the Turgs, invaded Barovia and drove Strad's family from their ancestral lands. Strad rallied the tattered Barovian forces, driving the Turks back in a grueling and bloody conflict that would last decades. Strad's youth had long since been spent by the time his weary armies defeated the last of the Turk warlords. As the noble houses of Barovia struggled to rebuild from their losses, Strad claimed the mountain fortress of the last Turk, renaming it Castle Ravenloft, to honor his mother, Queen Ravenia. Strad called for his scattered relatives to join him at the Castle Ravenloft and re-establish the proud von Zarovich lineage. It was then that Strad first met his younger brother, Sergei, a handsome and charming young cleric or Morning Lord, or 5th edition Lathander. In Sergei, Strad saw himself before the coming of Turks. Jealousy for lost youth filled his heart. While living at Castle Ravenloft, Sergei met a local villager named Tatiana, a young woman as full of life and beauty as himself. Their love was immediate and pure. Sergei brought Tatiana to Strad, announced the plans of a holy union, and asked for his elder brother's blessing. Unfortunately, this was a very wrong move, since Strad was immediately in love with the girl, but she only loved Sergei, treating Strad like her elder. A desperate hatred for Sergei filled Strad's heart. This was when Strad made his pact with the Death, as recorded in the Tome of Strad. He talks about how Death came to him and he promised Tatiana's heart if only he killed his own brother. Sources differ on the exact moment mists took Barovia and its people. Some believe the moment Strad murdered Sergei with an assassin's blade was when the domain of Barovia was formed. Others point to Tatiana throwing herself from the castle walls after she heard of Strad's love and her beloved's death. As Strad were to fall, assassins hired by a patriarch of the Lisnia family released their arrows in order to kill him. All his hopes destroyed, Strad had nothing left but fury. He rampaged through the castle, slaughtering guests and those assassins alike. By dawn, not a single soul was left alive within the castle walls. The realm of Dread was born. The domain of Barovia originally existed as an island of terror, alone in the mists. Strad retreated from public life, and many Barovian villagers came to believe that he too had died. The few survivors of the massacre scattered throughout the domain, settling into their new lives. Strad spent the century learning the limits of his mist-bound prison and adapting to undeath. Strad also spent his years hunting down the traitorous Leo de Lisnia, eventually tracking him down to a remote monastery nearly 5 decades after the ill-fated wedding. Most accounts agree that wherever Leo de Lisnia is now, his torment has never ended. His family survived, however. To this day, the de Lisnia name is renowned for cunning and infamous duplicity. In time, Barovians started encountering strange people from distant lands. Most of the stranglers were simple lost wanderers. Some of these folk adapted to their new home, but others struggled to return to their own worlds. The latter usually disappeared. One group of powerful outlander heroes assaulted Castle Ravenloft themselves, believing they could destroy the evil within it. They were never seen again, their fates all too clear. A few of these outlanders retain historical significance. The first of these new arrivals were the enigmatic tribes of the Vestani. According to the legend, the first appeared at the stroke of midnight, separating the years 469 and 470. The Vestani were soon feared and respected for their sixth sense and command over the mists. The Vestani leader, the wizened Madame Eva, soon forged an alliance with Count Strahd, a pact based on mutual need, not respect. A few years after the arrival of the Vestani, a young boy named Martin Pelkar emerged from the Svalch woods, claiming that a luminous sylvan being had rescued him from the beasts that had slaughtered his parents. Though often dismissed as a madman, he would spend the rest of his life establishing what today is only known as the Cult of Morning Lord. The last of the significant outlanders is Aslan, a fan-favorite, powerful wizard who emerged from the mists at the end of the century. As with many outlanders before him, Aslan was obsessed with his goal of escaping Barovia. Strahd and Aslan formed a cautious alliance, and for the next 4 decades, Aslan, who now rules the kingdom of Darkon, dwelled in a remote tower overlooking Lake Zarovich, scrutinizing the planar fabric of the Land of Mists. Eventually, finding out this land's secret, its ability to answer the evil action with the growth of the domain or multiple new ones. He eventually built a machine that was supposed to weaken the mists, enough for Strahd and him to escape. But in all good traditions of Ravenloft, their plan failed, and they parted ways with both blaming the other for their own failures. After suffering nearly 2 centuries of isolation, Barovia was finally joined by new domains. Forlorn was the first to appear, connecting with Barovia's southern border to form the first cluster. Curious Barovian explorers ventured into this new land, only to retreat from its twisted, inhuman inhabitants, who they dubbed goblins. 3 decades later, the domain of Arak materialized to the northeast. Unlike monstrous Forlorn, Arak was home to several human towns where denizens told tales of dark elves and evil fae. The Barovians took their first faltering steps towards trade, and Barovian cluster began to grow into what would soon be called the core. In the autumn of 579, Mordant appeared to the west of Barovia, and the core now had a coastline. At the same time, appearance of Darkon doubled the size of the core. Later, Bloodspur, a blasted wasteland, joined the core near Forlorn. Half-mad human refugees fled into Barovia, claiming their homes had been destroyed by a race of alien, brain-stealing entities. The 6th century closed with an event of horrendous devastation that would be unmatched until the Requiem. Due to the meddling of a certain Loth Prince inside the domain of Arak, in the spring of 588, a massive and violent sandstorm destroys all life on the surface of Arak. This disaster transported Mount Lament in the newly formed domain of King. Both of these desolate regions were deemed cursed and have been shunned by sensible travelers ever since. The century following the Scourge of Arak was marked by explosive growth. A dozen new domains joined the core, sprouting like tumors, and were matched by just as many Islands of Terror. The mists withdrew to reveal the Sea of Sorrows, leading to the steady trade of goods and ideas between Mordant, Lamordia, and Darkon, and ushering the northeastern core into a new age of enlightenment. After having been scattered to the winds, the Delisnia family gathered in the new domain of Borca and re-established their economic might. One of their number, Yakov Delisnia, claimed to be the messenger of a divine guardian and founded the Church of Ezra. Ezra teaches her followers to help one another and be kind and compassionate, as these are the only virtues that will save people when the end of the world hits. You can imagine how much locals like this one. By the end of the 7th century, the first clerics of the Lawgiver, Ezra's most powerful rival Fate, would establish their church as the state religion of Nova Vasa. In the end of the century, an outlander named Vlad Drakov appeared in western Darkon, massacring several villages before Aslan's undead forces drove his mercenaries into the mists, creating the domain of Falkovnia. So this is it for history of Ravenloft for right now, since it became quite a big video that I wasn't expecting. So please tune in next week for the second part of it, and thank you all for watching. Leave a like and don't get lost in the dark.